So I want to welcome everybody to the at-home songwriting meeting today. And today I wanted to invite a special guest, someone who I've known for a few years now, through different online songwriting circles, through at-home songwriting, through some other groups. And the reason why I invited him is because he does a ton of co-writing, and a lot of people have an interest in collaboration. And how do you find collaborators? How do you have successful collaborations? What does that process look like? So I think this person is someone who I think has done more co-writing than almost anybody that I know in my own circle. So Adam Howard Schneider, Adam, welcome to At Home Songwriting. Um, I know I asked you to talk about your experience in co-writing, but maybe start by introducing yourself, where you're from, and kind of how you got into music, and then dive into the co-writing piece of it.
Okay, well, hello everyone. Good morning. I'm broadcasting here from New York, New York. I'm about 5 blocks from the Empire State Building. I can see her if I lean forward and cock my head to the right. Um, let's see, how did I get into music? Well, it was pretty much on my own. I mean, my mom played a little piano. My dad didn't really do anything musically, but what both of my parents did do was my dad uh, I always say he gifted me the Beatles, not just his records, but he assured me, he said, listen, if you're going to play rock and roll and you're going to be into this music thing, it begins and ends with these guys, and I'm not so sure he's wrong after all these years. It's kind of, it's funny, right? Old habits die hard. And my mother turned me on to someone who I consider one of the Beatles' children, but not to discount his own contributions, Billy Joel. I grew up on Long Island. So that was really my orientation with songs. Really, when I first started writing songs, Paul and Billy are like my heroes, and I wrote melody first, very meticulously for many years, and then the lyrics. Sometimes I'd write songs. We all know the scrambled egg story with Yesterday, right? The dummy lyrics, right? Right, dummy lyrics, and then eventually I'll know what my song was about. Let's see. So how I got to where I am now, I would say that I've been seriously songwriting. It's funny, everything's in phases, right? Like I tell people I've been seriously songwriting for 20 years, but then I say, but I don't really know how long I've been knowing what I'm doing. That always seems like that window keeps getting smaller with every epiphany. Like, I don't feel like I know what I'm doing for the past couple weeks, But no, I guess it's been about like 20 years. When just before the pandemic started, I was very frustrated with myself in that I wasn't in any bands. And if I'm in bands, I have things to write for. And if I write for my church, actually, too. I've written some really radical stuff, that kind of indie folk stuff for the little kiddie choir to sing. And that's always been fun and challenging. And our music director is very encouraging with that. But I guess so. Right before the pandemic, I got very frustrated with my personal output. Right, I just didn't have deadlines. I wasn't writing enough songs. Took me forever to write songs. Just overthinking, tinkering, yeah, et cetera, et cetera. And I asked a few friends if they wanted to start our own song circle. So we're all familiar with song circles, right? So this was a bunch of us in person. A friend of mine generously donated every Sunday afternoon his large apartment here in New York, not a lot of those. And we would all meet and share work and critique the work. And there were people showing up between about 6 and 10 people would show up pretty consistently. And, I told everybody kind of, comically, but somewhat seriously, I was like, I did this because people were thanking me. They were like, Adam, I'm staying on top of this and written a song every week. And I already feel like I'm learning things, learning from each other. And I said, well, I did this for selfish reasons. I'm like, I wanted to pad my catalog. They're like, well, we're all doing it. So that only lasted a few months before the pandemic hit. And then we moved over to Zoom. And then there were even more of us. And there were like 12 of us that showed up consistently every Saturday morning. And I really padded my catalog there. And eventually I kind of segued into writing mostly country, because I realized that I just wanted to write. I didn't necessarily want to be in bands. I wanted to write. And the only way I could think of to get people to cut my songs was, when like country follows the old business model, the old A&R model, not across the board, but there are still artists that do largely, other people's songs, and even artists that do write will do other people's songs if the song is good enough. So right now, I guess just to summarize, where I'm at right now is I've been aggressively co-writing for about 3 years, aggressively, as Chad mentioned. And I'm seeking a publishing deal. That's personal goal right now, or a significant cut, whichever one comes first. So I guess without further ado, let's talk about why co-writing. I think that's the first step. So this is kind of a, I guess, a paraphrasing here, because I heard somebody say something like this, these 4 specific things I kind of reworded, but for every person in the room, that's another collection of song ideas right there, right? That's another imagination in which to approach the idea and create the story. Another jukebox of influences, and possibly the most important thing, one more person's life experience to draw from, right? I mean, we all are going to say things and interpret things in ways that are completely different from each other. So with every person in the room, now I'm not saying, I know there's some pop rooms where you see 10, 11, 12 names, but I do, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know how that exactly works. I'm usually in the 2, 3, 4 range. But I do see with every body in the room, it just expands the possibilities tremendously. Now, I also feel like when you're really in what I call, or what a lot of people call, a flow state, where you're just wearing the creative hat and not the editor hat, and everything's clicking, and that you're going to have a chance to go back and rewrite things and tinker, and just when you're really just letting things flow, you have a less likely chance of, what I say is hitting a snag. We all write alone here. I mean, I write alone too still. When I hit a snag, I think about if someone was actually in the room with me, the chances of us hitting a snag simultaneously, I think are very slim, and I've seen that, and just keep it rolling. It's like, improv theater, if you've ever seen it, it's just like passing the baton. And another reason about why co-writing is from an exposure standpoint. Now, anyone in the room could share an audio file of your co-written song. They could perform it live, just as you could. They could perform it at a song circle. They could play it for a publisher. Now, if someone in the room has a publishing deal, they would have to play it for their publisher. Like, that's their obligation. So if you write with somebody a lot that has a publishing deal or has significant cuts, your songs are going to get shared around by, better ears, and ears that could make a difference in your career. Let's see. So as far as finding co-writers, right? I have found them through global songwriting organizations like NSAI, you may know about. Local songwriting organizations like where I am, we have the New York Songwriters Collective, the New York Songwriters Circle. And then, of course, you can meet people in song circles, although those are hard to find. Like I said, I created my own. Social media groups. I've met a ton of people on social media groups, Instagram, Facebook songwriting group. Facebook's still good for that. I think I meet more musicians on Instagram, in terms of, hearing their content and whatnot, but Facebook songwriting groups, I mean, I meet people all the time there. Open mics, right? Everybody here, we're in different places, most of us, but everywhere has open mics. Even the smallest cities have open mics. Writers rounds. I know, Pierre, you said you just came back from Nashville, right? So you probably checked out some writers rounds. If anybody doesn't know what that is, that's kind of a more formal open mic where there are 3 or 4 stools on a stage and 3 or 4 songwriters alternate songs. That's a big thing in Nashville. We have those in New York a bit. I run one of them here as well. Another place to meet co-writers at local concerts, especially ones that are affiliated with, say, BMI or ASCAP. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was checking the songwriting credits on songs that you like. Now, if you see a song that's a smash hit, a global smash hit, and you go into the credits and then you want to poke around the internet and look for those people's emails, you might hit a wall in finding them. But, lesser known artists, up and coming artists. You see who's on the writing credits. I mean, you can find these people. They're very accessible on social media, et cetera, et cetera. So now, when it comes to approaching prospective co-writers, the best ways that I know of, well, first of all, it helps if you're familiar with one another's work. But if that's not the case, and let's say you see someone perform that you may want to write with, it's good to have a business card. Expect to exchange websites, socials, or any links where you have music posted. If you're just courting them online, you want to include links as well, obviously. Now, with the help of a few others, I think I just mentioned, I run these Nashville-style writers' rounds here in New York, and I do find those, I'm going to reiterate, I do find those among the best places to meet people, especially if you're one of the performers, because that's like leaving your resume on stage. So anyone you're interested in writing with that's in the room will be instantly familiar with your work, and you really can't beat that scenario. I mean, here's, you're going to get a lot of no's. I get more no's than I get yeses. I mean, and that comes with the territory because I co-write so much, and you don't want to pester anyone. People have different reasons as to why, but there's nothing wrong with saying just what I have right here. Well, keep me in mind if you're writing, in my case, country, pop, or pop country, and you need anyone to fill, the roles of, and, I'm a melody person, I'm a track person, and, whatever skills you bring to the table, you want to make sure that you're really on point with those skills. And when it comes to co-writing, and we'll get to this more, you don't have to do everything. That's the beauty of it. So the things that you do, you want to be world-class at, or you want to strive to be world-class at. Now, ways to prepare. So I found that it's best to come with things that, first and foremost, you are excited about, because obviously it's challenging to get others to match your enthusiasm if you're not feeling it already. Personally, I tend to be most enthusiastic about fresh ideas, meaning the ones that are like the most recent entries at the top of my iPhone note idea scroll. I'm sure we all have some form of that somewhere, or we keep it in notebooks or wherever it is, right? But I think the things that are the most fresh on my mind, because I have ideas that have accumulated over years, decades, still sitting around that I haven't written, and I will never get to all of them. I don't know that any of us will. And it's great to have those. But I do think that, things lifted directly from my morning journal, something I heard someone say, on my way to the writing room, whatever it is, the fresher the idea, the more you remember why you put it in your phone in the first place. That's the way I look at it. You capture inspiration at the source. So yeah, it's a good problem to have that I do have these, ideas all over the place in the phone and notebooks and clouds and databases, that I will never get to all of them, and I could let it overwhelm me. But what I look at is that these are kind of like insurance. If none of the fresh stuff is piquing anyone's interest in the writing room, then I'll break out some other things that I know are in my database that are kind of sure things that I think I'm like, oh, no one will pass if I propose this idea or whatever. But you'd be surprised. If everyone's not feeling it, I say wait till we have the idea in the room that everybody is really, really jazzed and enthusiastic about. So people work differently, obviously, and that includes the way people start and what kind of ideas they prefer to build songs around. Now, I'm happy to build around anything, although I do have my preferences, and I have reasons why they are my preferences. You could show up with inspiring sounding titles. A lot of people write starting with a title, right? Sometimes even if I have an idea of what we could do with the title, I might ask a co-writer what angles they think we could approach it from before I even tell them what I was thinking, so as to not bias or influence them. And then, of course, I will tell them whatever angle or angles I was thinking after they've shared their thoughts. Now, it's fun to brainstorm with people even further to come up with additional angles. And the more emotional, the more universal, the more unique, the better. You could even have, and this is pretty big in country, the setup line to the title. Most of the time in country, and I'm sorry if anyone, I think there are a lot of parallels with country here, so I will go back to it just because it's where most of my experience is, but, and pop does this as well, country especially, the last couple of lines of the chorus are always kind of like that landing spot, as, I've heard Shane McAnally call it. And a lot of times I'll come to a write with not just a title, but with the line, the penultimate line of the chorus before the title appears. So we know how it's going to land. And then we kind of write to that, you know. Sometimes I might even come in with an idea of what we're going to say in each section of the song. That's like a map of the song. I've heard people also call blueprint, obviously. The song start thing is very big now too, where you show up with a chorus you wrote. Sometimes if it's kind of slow to start from a title or whatever it is, or you kind of can't get your footing, be like, what, this whole chorus that I'm really feeling good about. Let's see if anyone likes this, and then boom, all of a sudden somebody's like, oh wow, I totally want to build a song around that, and boom, you're off to the races. You could bring a track. That's a huge thing, again, and even bigger in pop than country. People write to tracks. There's a lot of top lining, scat singing, this and that could get things going. You could come up with an opening line, show up with an opening line to someone, be like, hey, I didn't know what to do with this, but I think this, this sounds like the beginning of a song. Where is it headed? You could just come in with a chord groove vibe, anything really. Guitar riff, bass line, rhythm. Anything is fair game to start a song in my book. Does anybody have any questions yet? I'm blowing through quite a bit here.
I have a question, Adam.
Go for it.
Going back to I loved what you said about how to politely, like when someone turns you down, what your response should be, like, hey, keep me in mind. What do you use when you want to approach someone? What's kind of the way to do it without being like creepy and stalkerish, right? Like, because I think that's the thing, like you don't want to just walk up to somebody and be like, write a song with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just it's familiarity. It's kind of like dating, you don't want to just you don't want to just come up to someone and without any kind of background, be like, hey, I've been following some of your work, and again, like I said, if you're in a scenario where you've just performed and they've performed, then it's a lot easier to do things, and just you can casually mention, hey, I really here's some parallels between our work, and I think we could really vibe in the writing room. But I do think it's something that you want to kind of build up to. Yeah, you want to familiarize yourself with somebody's work. You want them to get to be familiar with yours, and you want to tell them what you bring to the table, and tell them what you like about what they're doing. You want to just you want to make it seem like it's anything but just cold, cold calling. Does that kind of answer that?
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
perfect. Because
cool.
I even think about sometimes when you meet people, like even if you want to write with them really bad, like maybe wait till like the second time you see them to bring it up, or like get to know them as people before you see them as like just a way to make music, right?
Yes, especially if now I go to Nashville a lot, but I run into the same people all the time, right? It's a small world. I run into the same songwriters and musicians in New York. um, then yes, to your point, just kind of like, make a mental note. I really like that guy's songs. I really like her songs, whatever it is. And then eventually, like, hey, I saw you play at this place. I saw you play here. I saw you speak here. I was wondering if you might be interested in working together. So yeah, it's familiarity with their work. And then, yeah, it's time, and it's like kind of like an accumulation of I think I'm going to hit this person up now. All right, let's see. So that was ways to prepare. Things to bring. Obviously, this varies with everybody. With with me, I bring a guitar. I mean, I have a writing room. I do most of my writes on Zoom. So I have a keyboard here as well. So when I say instruments and accessories, for me, it's piano, keyboard. It's when it comes to keyboard and guitar. And when it comes to guitar, obviously that means tuners, capos, all that. You want to have your computer, you want to have your charger, if you want to go analog, your notebook, your pens, your pencils, hydrate, of course. I have a coffee machine here as well, as a lot of us do. And I am lucky in that I have, and a lot of us have, other screens. If you have an iPad, I think it's good to put Zoom on the iPad and then do the song on your, in my case, my MacBook. Let's see. All right, so let's see. So let's get into what I've observed. Now you're going to hear a lot of the same themes with me, and these, everything I'm sharing right now. And I've taken a lot of courses on songwriting. I've read a lot on, I'm sorry, on co-writing, and I've read a lot on the subject. But mostly what you're going to hear today is really from my experience, and there are things that I see over and over and over again. So you're going to hear a lot of those points a lot. So as far as what I think makes a co-write successful, first and foremost, we have to respect each other's methods. We have to respect each other's ideas and workflow. Okay. And by methods, I mean, some people might not want to start from a title. Ideas, obviously, we want to say, say ideas out loud, dare to suck. I mean, we have a lot of laughs in the writing room when we're saying goofy things, and we know it because a lot of times those goofy things will lead to the right thing. There are no judgments in the writing room. And then, and workflow, some people work a little slower than others. Some people work a little quicker. Some people want to look at certain things a little closer. Some things want to just kind of blow through those things. You want to kind of make sure everybody is being heard and everybody is being able to work to their potential within the collective group. Like for me, sometimes I like to walk around. I like to tap whatever I need to do to find where, in my case, I'm a melody guy. I'm very into cadence and phrasing. And if you throw a title at me with its setup line, I'm going to want to find, where does that hook sit rhythmically in the song? How's it going to be sung? Where are certain words going to land for maximum impact? That's where I kind of build a song out from. Now, once everyone gives each other the space to be in their own comfort zone, then we can focus on the collective comfort zone, like I mentioned. And then I think it all comes down to excitement over the idea. I know I already mentioned that. Something that everyone in the room can barely contain their enthusiasm over. Something we are all connecting with personally and have so much to say about. And the more clarity we have with the idea individually and with each other, the better. Now, I want to repeat what I just said because I think it bears repeating. I find that the idea has to resonate with me and that my co-writers also have to be feeling similarly about it. So we're all writing the same song. And that's another thing I find that we could start off writing the song and think very different things of this hook that we're writing. So once we identify with it ourselves and once we make sure that we're all aligned, then again, we can be off to the races. It also, another thing too, is if you can identify the emotion or the emotions involved, or even a single emotion that the song could just hammer all the way through, that also really helps, I find. Because you can tap into the feelings of the emotion itself and draw parallels between the song and other times you felt a certain way, like how a director of a movie might say to me if I was an actor, Adam, you're not angry enough here. We need anger. Get angry like someone just smashed your Martin guitar. Now, I might find some really good angry lines that'll fit with the song, even if it isn't about someone smashing my guitar. It's just like, how did that make me feel? Right. I think it also helps to know who we may be writing the song for, obviously, and if we don't have a specific artist in mind, and by the way, the artist can also be in the room, and that's a whole different approach we can talk about later if you like. But it helps to understand the character archetype, the language they might use, and ultimately what it is they want, because most successful songs are about one thing, and all of those things are pretty crystal clear. All the things I just mentioned, they're crystal clear when a song is firing on all cylinders, in my experience. It also helps if we're clear on what each section of the song is going to say, again, to get us aligned. So we're not just listing things in random order or rhyming things just to rhyme, throwing random lines out, hoping that something will stick and then trying to justify them, which could sometimes lead to changing a bunch of stuff and eventually the initial idea, right? I'm sure we've all been there. Knowing exactly how we're going to approach the hook with that setup line. Again, there's that expression, the setup line can help align the entire rest of the song. The hit writer once said to me that, I asked him, what's your process? And he said, well, I get that hook and setup and then I draw a roadmap straight to it. Right. And I know I mentioned Shane Mack before about, that landing spot. And he said, it's our job as songwriters to prop that up. Right. So the clearer everything is, it almost feels like everyone in the room will know instinctually if something is going to work or not, which reduces disagreements. That's another thing I want to either repeat or just kind of unpack a little more. I feel like the clearer we are on where we're headed, the more obvious it is when somebody throws something out. They could throw something out and it could be a perfect way to say what we're saying, or there could be a line that may sound cool but works against the hook. And if we all recognize that in the moment, then we're not even haggling with each other over an idea. Sometimes someone gets upset over not getting a line in the song that they really like, but it's clearly going to take away from that main idea. I'll say, don't get mad at me, get mad at the idea. This is what we're writing. You want to write to that idea. Sometimes you hear a great line that might work, but it doesn't really do exactly what you want it to do. And that's when you have to kind of say to yourself, and we'll get to this again, kill your darlings. We all know that expression, and that can be a very, very liberating feeling to do. So the more ironclad I think the plan is on how to approach the idea, the more obvious the right and wrong lines become. And that brings me to disagreements in the writing room. Now, I feel like the clearer everyone is at the outset, the less chance there is for a disagreement. Now, if someone feels strongly about something, that can tend to win a lot. If somebody's really, even if it's just one person in a writing room of 3 or 4, where somebody's really digging their heels in on something and the other 3 are not digging their heels in on what they don't like about it per se, and they don't have a solution, and that other person's just like, please trust me on this, and otherwise, obviously, there's a lot of majority rules scenarios, but I don't feel like majority rules is a thing just to settle disputes. I think for me, like, let's say I'm in a room and 2 of my co-writers feel strongly about something that I don't, but I might not have a solution. Like I said, I might just be like, all right, I got to defer to you. I mean, it's just, you both feel strongly. That's why we're here. And in numbers, with every person that's here. Now here's a little something. This is something that I've been noticing a lot more and more lately. 3 things that often come to mind when it comes to clarity. I'm constantly thinking about the order of the ideas, the position of each idea, and the real estate devoted to each idea. And by this, I mean, and I don't want to get off topic. I want to keep this again within the confines of co-writing, because this is, again, getting everyone aligned. But sometimes you need to say a certain thing closer to the hook to make that hook land harder. That is, I'm sorry, I just skipped to 2. That would be the position of each idea, for impact. And then the order of ideas, obviously you have to say certain things first for something after that to make sense. Sometimes you need context. So it's very important. It's like, did we, or, is this line coming out of nowhere, or have we been clear on what this might mean by what we needed to say beforehand? And then the real estate devoted to an idea. Sometimes you have a 4-line stanza to say a certain thing, and you might need to give a few examples of something, for example, and maybe one of those examples is best fleshed out over 2 lines. And you're like, well, now we just used half the stanza, half of a 4-line stanza on this one example. Is that important? Do we need this, or is it going to take away from the other examples? Is it going to shine too much of a light on this one thing? So that's always something I'm always considering and always mentioning in the writing room. And I think it helps a lot of the rooms that I'm in. Now, here are some things, just a quick overview of things I've seen make a co-write go not well, right? Now, ego and pride, I think we all know this is ultimately the killer, and this shows up in many different ways. And I don't know that we have to unpack all the different ways that shows up, but I think if you can put the song first and take yourself a little less seriously in the writing room, that really helps, because, the chances are that you're right, even if you are the top pros in the world, the chances of what you're writing that day going to go on to be the thing are not high. So you have to kind of just let the process play out, like treat it like a conversation. It's not sacred. It really isn't. Just lose yourself in the song. There'll always be time to rewrite it. If you think you wrote it wrong, have that conversation. But for the most part, it's like, have fun with it, have fun with it. You're not in there trying to prove anything to anyone. You're just trying to write a song. This is not rocket science, thankfully, or curing cancer. This is just songwriting, folks. So I think that another culprit is not trusting in ourselves and each other, right? And by that, I mean just letting it flow. We can be so dismissive of ourselves and of each other, of things that just get kind of chucked out in the moment. But so many of those things that get chucked out, if they're not the thing you're going to settle on, they will lead to them. They can and will lead to those things. And sometimes you have to get those things out. I know we probably all heard that great quote of what is it, Ed Sheeran, where he talks about turning on a dirty faucet. You get in the room and sometimes, yeah, let's throw out some silly things if we don't have the right line just yet. We'll get to it. Now the other thing is, this is a big thing, is devolving into the creator and the editor constantly battling each other. And that is, something that's different for a lot of people. But I have found that when we're nitpicking, is it going to be is it going to be is it going to be but, things like that, or maybe something isn't phrasing perfectly in the moment, but we know we're saying what we want to say, I just leave it. We'll get to it after. Because sometimes you can tinker and tinker and tinker and realize 30 minutes just passed by tinkering something that you may end up changing down the road anyway. So you wear very different hats when you're the creator and the editor. I don't know if any of you have read Anne Lamott's book, Bird by Bird. She has this thing where she talks about the downdraft, the updraft, and the dental draft. And I'm going to get off topic just for a second and just talk about, writing versus rewriting. The downdraft, she talks about, get it down. The updraft, fix it up. The dental draft, check every tooth and really perfect it, right? But perfecting it as you can go, like I said, can be a vibe killer. Now, I do know some people that do edit as they go. I'm game if they want to edit as they go, so long as we're shooting to finish the draft then in one session. And I'll get to that later about how I do believe that is a very helpful thing to get a first draft done in a first session. Again, capturing the inspiration at the source. Just like I said, songwriting is a conversation. The only real difference is, the only thing that makes it a little more complicated is there's a little more attention to cadence, rhyme, and notes, right? Now, except in conversations, though, you don't get to rewrite your conversations. In songs, you do. You can correct in a song that thing you regret saying, as opposed to real conversations where whatever regrettable thing you said is out there forever. Sometimes. Plus, there are things that I know I just won't catch until I've distanced myself from the song for a bit, sometimes days, weeks, written other songs before going back to it. Julia Cameron in The Artist's Way says, speed kills the censor. And by me bringing that up, I don't mean that you always have to write quickly, but I do put a lot of stock. Like I said, I can't hammer this point enough. I do put a lot of stock in ideas that come instinctually. And why I can't hammer that point enough is because this is really important in the co-writing room, because there can be a lot of second guessing. We tend to blurt out what we mean on the fly all the time in life, so why not capture it in song? Now you see this item on here, playing whack-a-mole, right? So sometimes the idea can get away from us in the room and we wind up playing whack-a-mole. We write a line we like so much, but it changes something else we might have said. And before we know it, we've changed what the song was originally about. And many of these lines we're holding on to, that were the catalysts in this whole song changing thing, are inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, you do not want to play whack-a-mole and start, it can be a nightmare to start changing this and that, and then going back to this. Again, any questions here on any of this thus far? We're good. What's the show of hands that co-write? Well, so we're looking at some pictures here. Who has moderate co-writing experience, extensive co-writing experience? Right on. Cool.
I've done some. Dana's got her hand raised too.
Right on. I see you there. Yeah. Trying to juggle this here with the screens here. This is my first time doing this. Chat has entrusted me with this format, using the slides as well here. So this is kind of fun with Zoom.
Shelly in the chat said minimal experience. Jennifer says none. She's brand new to songwriting. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm glad that you're jumping in, Jennifer. That's great.
Yes. And if I may say, I said before, this isn't rocket science. I do believe I'm an eternal optimist. I'm known in a lot of my writing rooms as, a cheerleader, a very enthusiastic person. And if there's one thing I say, I think we all can do this. I think we all have greatness in us. It's just a matter of, and I don't say this in a cynical way, but it's like, who can get out of their own way the best? That's really the difference. Like, I think there is, I'm not exaggerating when I say I think there can be now I'm going to take back what I was about to say and be like, I think there is a Stevie Wonder and Joni Mitchell in all of us. All right, maybe not, but who wants to be them? There's only one. Stevie can't do what Joni's doing, and Joni can't do what Stevie's doing. But I do think there is greatness in all of us. I think if we really embrace who we are, we embrace our own personal musical aesthetic when writing, and certainly in the writing room, just as we do our own language. We're going to say things in ways that just are not going to be said by someone else. And that is really our secret weapon ultimately. And when you get in the co-writing room, that kind of dynamic goes up exponentially. Okay, so solutions. I was showing my wife this last night, and she was stuck on the last slide, and she's like, so what do you do? I'm like, well, we'll get to that, right? So I think first and foremost, let's make sure we're clear on the idea, because I think that is the thing. And Chad and I were discussing it. That was kind of the catalyst for this workshop, was just, I feel that more often than not, it's just we're not clear on what the idea is with ourselves and with each other, right? And then once we get past that, okay, let's make sure, are we still inspired by it? I mean, are things going sideways because we're just like, someone's not feeling it, or we're all just not feeling it, and we're all just kind of what I call just fishing for lines and just seeing what sticks without any real purpose. Another way to right the ship here, and I know we do all kinds of exercises like this here at Home Songwriting, brainstorm. There are a zillion ways to do that. Take a break, do destination writing, just do word association, phrase association, whatever it is, to just kind of think about, are we exploring every sense right now? Are we exploring or the who, what, when, where, whys? I mean, there are so many different things that we can do to kind of jumpstart, or reignite that creativity in the room when we feel like, things might be going a little sideways. And then, of course, the aforementioned kill your darlings. And another thing I cannot stress enough, nothing feels better. I know this sounds crazy. Nothing feels better than killing a line you were so excited about, like killing the line you thought was the best in the song, but then ultimately realizing it's just not contributing to what you're trying to say. It really does feel good once you kind of like become a Jedi at it. You're just indifferent. You're like, you know what? Another great line is going to come right behind it. If I'm going to hold on to this and think that somehow this line is, holding on to this line is going to somehow make or break my career, I might as well quit now, because that's pretty wild thinking. And then lastly, lower the stakes. Remind everybody that we're here to have fun. We're here to enjoy each other's company. We're here to create something that was never created before. Like, we're not like, is Clive Davis waiting for this submission tonight? Like, chill out, and again, simplify, and that involves some of the things, we've already mentioned, like brainstorming. It's like, go back to the basics. You're like, what are some of the senses we haven't explored? What are some of the angles some of the other things that we might say in real life if we were in this scenario? Just say that. How many times, I can't remember how many times someone asked me, he's like, Adam, I like a lot of these lines. I feel like I get what you're trying to say, but I'm just not sure what you mean here. I'm like, oh, what I meant was this. And then they'll be like, well, why don't you just say that? I mean, can't tell you how many times in my experience in the writing room with people, it's just like, what are you trying to say? Well, this. So say that, actually. In fact, that's the best way to say it, And then I've combined that, taking a break into this category here at the end. Yeah, take a walk, take a break. Sometimes have a meal, this like right brain, left brain thing. It's for real. The difference is, I mean, I can't tell you, riding my bike here every morning, so many ideas come to me on the way here because of that. My one part of my brain is focused on riding the bike, and it's yes, I'm very alert in New York, but it is a very monotonous, thing, and all of a sudden, of course, my brain goes to, whoa, what's that melody in my head? Whoa, what's that I just remembered how I felt, how that person made me feel the other day when they said such and such a thing. And I'll bring these things right into the writing room, immediately frantically writing things down, typing, recording voice memos, whatever it is. So how long should sessions take, right? Now, personally, I like to set aside 3 hours for a writing session, and I do see that as industry standard, right? It could take longer, it could take less time. And if it takes longer, now if it's taking longer and you know you can finish it that day, then definitely take a break. Try and get it done that day if everyone's schedule permits, when the inspiration is there and the creator is clicking. Now, if it doesn't get done in a one-day session, we schedule a follow-up. Now, I prefer to schedule those as soon as possible. Now, my schedule is stacked as far as 3-hour blocks go, but I can always squeeze in an hour and an hour and a half, within a week, rather than, my 3-hour blocks are booked out pretty much, almost, into next year already. But I want to get things done, especially if we're feeling really good about it, and we'll get to that. So like if a song takes, though, more than 3 sessions, sometimes it can feel like a grind. If you really feel like those 3 sessions were necessary, that's one thing. I have not been in too many of those rooms. I feel like when it takes more than 3 sessions, there's an issue, and somewhere along the line, the spark may feel lost, and there's no clarity on what that initial idea was. Now, like I said, personally, I like to get a draft done in 1 session, and then I like to let it sit for a week, work on other things and cleanse the palate, as some say, and then revisit it and revisit it with my co-writers, get back in the email chain and just be like, hey, do we think this one has legs? And if everyone's feeling good about it, then we get in the room for a rewrite. Okay. And that's a whole nother skill and a whole nother process. And I know we've discussed it here in At Home Songwriting. So now if we feel this way, we schedule a rewrite session and clean up what we did that first day, basically. They say good songs are written, great songs are rewritten, right? And then I'll share it around for feedback. And that includes performing it as well. But although I might not perform it in a formal setting at that point, that might be performing for, friends, spouses, significant others and all that, get feedback from people, especially music fans, not just musicians and other songwriters. I think it's really important. The amount of information I get from my wife and from a lot of my co-writers, significant others and spouses and closest friends, especially people that are just music fans. I'm so grateful for the people that are willing to give me that kind of time, because they really can be the difference maker, because that's the listening public, So if the consensus is that the idea has legs and people have suggestions on how to make it better, once you get the feedback, you see if you're hearing a lot of the same kinds of things more than once, which gives more merit to each individual piece of feedback. If everyone's saying, I think that line's too long, it sings too weird, this line isn't too clear. Well, if more than one person is saying some of those things, they're probably right. So you do your rewriting accordingly and get the song out there, right? All right. Again, anyone has any questions, so I'm just looking at my slides right now, not looking at everybody. So if anyone has something to say, I'm okay. If chat's okay with it, if you just want to unmute and say something. I can't see the chat right now. If chat, if there's anything in there, please give me a holler.
No, I think some people we're just talking about where ideas come, and Shelley had mentioned taking breaks is good.
Oh, absolutely. The best.
Some of the co-writing comments, Jeanette said she's done 1 co-write from this group. Michael has only co-written at the songwriting retreat that we did recently, which is
your
awesome.
retreat, right? That's
my
great.
retreat. Yep.
Yeah. Well,
yep.
that's fantastic. If that's where it was first, and that happens a lot for a lot of people. People go on retreats, songwriting retreats, whether like a more organized one like you just had, or just more casual ones, rent a house and a bunch of us are going to go out to the country and write songs. But a lot of times people that show up to those don't have a lot of co-writing experience, and that's their experience, and that's great, because that's what you're all there for at those retreats. You're there to write songs, so it's a wonderful environment to do that. So let's see, keeping things organized. So amongst my many co-writers, I am pretty known as a highly organized person. And a lot of people have used my methods of organization, and I'm really not just so much proud of that, but kind of feel validated in that, I feel like I did these things just out of survival, because I have a lot of songs, I have a lot of folders and files, and it can get really messy in a hurry if you don't stay on top of it. And one of the things that I do is Google Docs, right? I think most of us, I think that's another thing in industry standard, if we're writing remotely, especially, people use Google Docs or some kind of program where you can edit in real time. Everyone can has editing capabilities in real time. So while I use Google Docs for lyrics, I keep each lyric doc in a Google folder so we can keep all the related audio together. So this is an important thing too, because I don't see this a lot. And I feel like I see it more and more in people that I work with because they saw me doing it. I learned it from someone as well. I can't even remember who I did learn it from, right? Now, the alternative to keeping everything together can be a nightmare of searching, or can become a nightmare of searching through texts or emails for random snippets of unlabeled audio, not knowing what's what, right? Now, in the folders, each piece of audio can say what it is, when it was recorded. So if I go into a folder, I can see the most recent version of the full draft by the label, November 15th, 2024, full draft, rather than just going in. Sometimes, people just be like version 1, version 2, version 3. I'm not too crazy about that unless we did multiple versions in one day. I think when you put the date, the most recent version. And it's not only a full draft, it's not always just a full draft. I mean, I have some folders that have only one piece of audio. We got it right the first time, or 2 pieces of audio. And then there are other ones that have 10 pieces of audio, or ones like a possible bridge idea. We might, pre-sketch, a pre-chorus sketch, whatever it is. Let's see. So another cool feature of Google Docs also is that you can set your notifications. And this is a big thing that I'm surprised how many people didn't know about this. And when somebody showed it to me, I felt like I could rule the world. Okay. Set your notifications to email you every time someone makes a change in the doc. So you don't have to email your co-writers if you put in a new line somewhere, right? You'll get an automatic email generated by Google, and whatever change was made in the doc, it'll be highlighted. So you know exactly what was done. And then there are also comments in there. You can constantly go back and forth. I have songs in various states of feedback and rewriting right now with threads of co-writers where we'll get an email from Google saying, so-and-so just entered feedback from such and such a pro or publisher or circle group, song circle group, whatever it is. And that'll be in the doc. And it'll be highlighted in the email from Google, the notification. And then it'll also be like, Rob made a comment, and then you go and you see the comment and be like, hey, this is what we heard. What do you guys think? Yada, yada. So you can keep the song in the doc, in one part of the doc, and you can keep the conversation somewhere else. So another thing too, and this is something I don't see a lot, but I see all the people that I write with are not just okay with doing it, but they like doing it with me. So another thing is I split my screen in half. I'm going to show this to all of you later. I'm going to open up, Google folder and whatnot. But I split the screen in half in what's called a table. Obviously that's a feature in all kinds of, whatever, I guess, document software. But, so I split the screen in half so I can keep the song on the left, and then the notes or the spare parts, or some people call it the boneyard, on the right. Now, what I find is when I don't do that, all those spare parts, they end up going under the song and eventually get pushed off the screen, and I like to see what I have. I want to see it all, there, as much as we can keep on the screen at once, because sometimes that line you're struggling to come up with, you might already have it in your notes. And that brings me to another thing too. I don't delete anything. So all those notes stay in that doc, because again, dare to suck. You never know what, you might have that line there. You just didn't have a chance to use it. And then all of a sudden, boom, now I know where to put it. The other thing too, in the docs, is at the top of the screen, I have a recurring Zoom link, right? So it's the same Zoom room every time. I don't, I do calendar wise, and I guard my reputation fiercely when it comes to organization. I keep bios and details, when they can, best nights to work, best days to work, whatever it is, on all my co-writers. One of the let's see, hang on a second. I keep everybody's IPI numbers as well. A lot of people do Zoom invites. They make specific meetings just for Zoom. I mean, I think that's important for things like at-home songwriting, for sure. But sometimes for co-writes, I mean, it's just like, nobody's crashing my co-writing room, my personal Zoom room, Anyway, so let's see. Next, I want to talk about how to be a better and more sought after co-writer. Now, if anyone's co-written with me, they might laugh hearing me say this, because I do talk a lot, but it is pretty well understood. And this is probably in a lot of areas of life. You should listen at least as much as you talk, right? You should also let someone be on a roll when they are. And that's another thing about, flow, about staying in a flow state, keeping the creative hat on. If somebody is like, I have a co-writer who does something that I've actually heard, and I know you've talked about him before. Chad knows I'm a huge fan of Ashley Gorley's, who's the hit king of country, mostly country, some pop. He just celebrated his 80th #1. And he does this, I know, a lot in the interviews I've read with him, something that a co-writer of mine who I've had some success with, we always write things that I'm really happy with. This guy will hop on a piano and he'll improvise the whole song. He'll get in the zone, but he'll hop on the piano and kind of be like, take the title, take the catchphrase, whatever it is, the setup line, and kind of frame it and kind of make up a song on the spot and be like, here's the ugly version of what I think, where I think we might want to be headed with this. And then, and it'll be like, and I'll record it and I'll be like, oh my gosh, everything was there. Wow, there was so much there. Now we just got to go in and just fill in the blanks. It's like coloring, you do a sketch, or, you get a tattoo and then you go in and you fill in the color in the lines or whatever. So let's see. So that's letting people, be on a roll, and when cool stuff is flowing out of them, just be a source of enthusiasm in the writing room, be that cheerleader. Sometimes you got to just be that person in the moment. Another thing is to offer solutions, okay? If you think something isn't working, rather than just saying that's not working or we could beat that, be more of a yes person, yes and person, like they do in theater improv, or well, what if we tried this person? Just saying that that's not going to work is never going to be as good as I was kind of thinking something like this, or so always offer solutions. And lastly, this little bit here about, be honest about what your strengths and weaknesses are. Work tirelessly on strengthening those strengths. I spend every day, it's funny, mentors have said this to me over the years. And the first time I heard it from a mentor, I kind of scratched my head when they were like, spend very little time on your weakness and spend a lot of time on your strength, right? Now, I'm a big baseball fan, okay? So, and there's a lot of baseball analogies out there. So, if a batter's is struggling to hit a certain kind of pitch, they're going to work on that, hitting that pitch in batting practice more than the pitches that they hit a lot easily, or a lot easier. They say practice to your weaknesses, and I think that's important when you're say writing alone, or if you're just practicing an instrument. But when you're going out there, you want to establish yourself as a co-writer. Make that, if you're good at one thing, be as good as you can be at that one thing. So I spend every day on things. I try and make them really fun. Like melody, if I have to pick one thing, melody is my primary skill. And I do all kinds of exercises. And when I say exercises, I mean within the context of writing. These are exercises geared towards writing songs. But, some days I'll just come in the writing room and just without even thinking about it, I'll just say, this is before my co-writes for the day. And I'll just say, I'm going to spend an hour. I'm just going to put this, I'm going to throw down this chord progression. I'm going to scat sing melodies over it. Maybe I'll just tap some rhythms over it and see if some melodies can come out of that, whatever it is. But, I'm constantly looking for ways to fine tune that primary skill of mine, melody.
So there's a question in the chat, Adam.
Yes, please.
So Michael said, thoughts on Zoom versus in person. Do you have
Great
any
question.
Do you have any tips for dealing with latency on Zoom co-writes?
Oh, on latency. Okay. Was that a question in the chat too? Because I didn't see that on latency.
Yeah. But
okay.
Yeah, so kind of two questions. One is, what are your thoughts on Zoom versus in person first?
Okay. So yes, I prefer in person. I know very few people. I don't know about I know people that do prefer Zoom, and obviously Zoom became, the norm after, the pandemic. I prefer in person. I think most people will prefer in person. That doesn't mean that, most of my co-writes are on Zoom. So it's a reality. So when you're asking, if you want to unmute whoever asked that and kind of unpack that a little bit about just what exactly you want to know about in person versus Zoom. Feel free to chime in. But as far as latency goes, the real issue is hearing everything. So there is that original sound from musicians feature on Zoom. I think you have to make sure that that's on almost every single time. If that is not on, there's an obnoxious amount of compression. Sometimes, especially if someone's singing and playing guitar at the same time, you may just hear their voice and not the guitar. So if you have that setting on original sound for musicians, you'll be in better shape. Also, depending on the sophistication of the setup of everybody in the room, there could be echo, and that is something that you just troubleshoot, because we usually figure it out. It's just, oh, it's such and such a, it's this person's mic is doing it. So you try and reconfigure your setup. You do whatever you have to do to make sure that the write goes smoothly. But as far as latency goes, the only issues with latency would be if you try and play together, and we don't try and play together in the writing room. We just don't. I know there's probably technology now that will allow that, but I haven't seen it as being necessarily important thus far. As far as being professional goes, and I know I mentioned before, I said these exact words, that I guard my reputation fiercely. You show up prepared, you show up on time, return emails, confirm appointments ahead of time. When I started, I used to have no shows, people no show all the time, whereas I was keeping meticulous records, like I still do, about everything. I have I kind of cross-reference, I keep a spreadsheet with all my appointments, and then I keep them in my phone calendar as well. I keep them in 2 calendars, right? So there's no way I'll miss an alert. But I used to have a lot of people no show. I mean, you book a co-write 2 months out, it's going to happen. It's just going to happen. Not everybody is me, like a total fanatic about, that one thing. And that is part of my skill set. But one of the things you can do, if maybe you're somebody that can get kind of oh, I forgot, I put it here, I didn't, just confirm. The weekend before, I will always confirm my appointments for the week. And when I started doing that a year and change ago, because I've been aggressively co-writing for about 3 years, I don't have anybody not show up. I don't have anybody not show up. I don't have anybody not show up excited too, because we just had a conversation just a few days before, even if we had booked that session 2 months prior. We just had a conversation, and I'll send them the folder and encourage people to put ideas in ahead of the write if that's something we want to do. Anyway, let's see. I think that is it on my slides here, folks. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and rejoin Planet Zoom. I know Chad's a little better at going between those slides and the room here, so I hope none of that was jarring. I hope people got something out of this, and I would love to take any questions you have. I mean, again, I was really happy this morning when I went over this material and realized, I took a step back. I realized I'm these are really my observations. These are not necessarily things I learned in co-writing courses or co-writing books. You see a lot of things float around, in all kinds of songwriting newsletters you sign up for, content creators and whatnot. But these are really things that I've seen. And I think that, you probably heard a lot of the same things coming up. And I know, I touched on ego and pride for a moment, and I know that has a lot to do with personalities in the room, but I've written, I have a very on personality. I've written with very reserved, mellow people who love writing with me as much as I love writing with them, because of the kinds of preparation we do, the kinds of clarity of idea. And I think those kinds of things, getting on the same page, everybody writing the same song, I really do feel like that is the culprit more often than personality clashes even. I think if everybody knows what it is and everybody identifies with it and feels like we have to give birth to this song, we have to do this. It's that kind of common ground, and fighting for the same cause makes all the other stuff kind of go away, I guess. What is anybody thinking? Please hit me with anything.
Adam, thanks so much for all your sharing. It's wonderful.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure. It is a pleasure.
I do have a couple questions, comments. I worked with a fellow, and we wrote a song together. His melody and my lyrics. And we got together twice, and he told me what he pictured. It was, he initiated it, and he specified he wanted a waltz, or pictured a waltz, and he pictured it happening in an alpine setting. So I did a lot of research about alpine flowers and dancing, and spent a lot of time and came up with some lyrics I thought were super. And he listened to it. We got together in person again, but then he seemed okay with it. But I never heard from him again. I
Oh,
emailed him, and
okay.
so I was encouraged to hear you say that if you both worked on it, you can publish it. I mean, I emailed to him. I found out about this songwriting contest, and I thought, this sounds really great for this certain category. But I think he was super busy with work. Maybe he didn't really like the song, and I mean, he seemed like he was just thinking about it.
You know, first of all, people are going to flake for legitimate reasons, for not legitimate reasons. I think that and also, like I said before, I get a lot of no's. I get more no's than I get yeses, and I'm not saying about necessarily co-writes, just in general. That's just the way it is. No, do you want to sing my song? No. Do you want to cut my song? No, but it's close to what we're looking for. You just hear a lot of no's, and you gotta roll with those. But I think that if it's something, I mean, you don't want to pester people, but if there's something there that you feel really strongly about, then yeah, just reach out to them. Plead your case. I have some songs that co-writers and I kind of forgotten about. Maybe like we got them to a place we liked, we got feedback, they kind of fell by the wayside. I mean, that's what happens when you have the more songs you have. I mean, my catalog is growing and growing and growing, and as much as that's making me a better writer, it's making me better co-writers, making me I'm learning a ton with every song that I finish. But it also gets tough, the admin end of it, kind of just managing it all. It's just like, wow, there was that one that so I keep things in different folders. I do keep most of the the collaborations are all in the Google Cloud, and I keep those in different folders. Oh, that's the other thing too. I wanted to share my screen and show you all what I do with let's see, with Google folders. Let's see.
And I think, Deanne, to your point about, working with someone, and then if you have a contest you want to submit it to and stuff, I would say just keep them up to date. Just let the person know, hey, I submitted. So that way, if something happens, they're not surprised.
Yeah, thank you for that idea, both of you.
And another thing, and it's Deanne, right?
Yes.
Deanne, another thing too, you heard me mention, and I'm going to show you all right now. I'm going to share my screen here. The notification thing. If you both had the notifications, then that person would get emails too. They would get emails from Google saying, Deanne made a comment. Would you like to respond to it? And it might say something like, hey, I think we should submit this to this songwriting contest. Hey, I think we should do this. And sometimes, again, like I said, people, and I don't say flake like in a bad way, like people flake out for legitimate reasons or not legitimate reasons, but sometimes we're having a hard time managing our lives. We have so many things going on, and you might just reignite something in someone. And if you say, hey, I'll be the one to do this, but do I have your permission to go ahead and submit this here? Or
Yeah, I'll try again.
Kind of reignite. Yeah. You know what? Why don't I get to some of these other questions too before I share that screen here? Because it might have to do with that. Pierre, go for it.
All right. First of all, thanks a lot for offering like kind of a grassroots level and on all of your experience. Yes, for me, I think I take with my takeaway here. It comes down to the personality too. Like for me, I do enjoy working on my own, and I've been like that for most things, right? So I guess it's the idea of having to take that step to make the jump into the collaborating and the co-writing thing. So that's a big takeaway. And I loved your line, good songs are written, but great songs are rewritten. And of course, with all the things you mentioned, with all the different input of maybe just one other person, and I kind of do that a bit with my son, so it's kind of easy, you know what I mean? That way it's like, because I know him and it's a familiarity, but it's to take that, I guess, step. And when I'm ready for it, I guess I'll say, yeah, let's do a co-write. But otherwise, it's kind of, you also mentioned kill your darlings. It's, you wrote it, and it's like, yeah. Like now, and a question for you though, personally, like looking back, and you've got lots of songs, I'm sure. let's say one of your most memorable songs, was that you writing it on your own or with a co-write? If you, it's a big question, but I'm sure you have lots of good songs that you like, but what one would it be, one that you wrote or with others?
That's a loaded question. It's interesting. Because I'm in a very transitional period right now with my writing personally. And I have gone back into my personal catalog, and there are songs, I have co-written songs and solo writes that I feel just as strongly about. So to that end, and this may have to do with your question a little bit, is co-writing necessary? Look, we all know Diane Warren writes by herself. We all know that most of our, pop culture heroes, the big names, wear a lot of hats. I know I mentioned Stevie Wonder before. Stevie Wonder wears a lot of hats. I mean, dude plays drums, plays all the instruments on some albums. Why hire people if you play drums as well as Stevie Wonder? But it's just a different dynamic. I have a friend who she is one of the most prolific writers I know, and also prolific co-writers I know. She does solo writes all the time, and they're brilliant. And she said to me, Adam, sometimes I get an idea and it's just me and my own noise in the room. Sometimes that's all I want, and like recently she wrote a very personal song about a family loss. And sure, that could have been co-written. We've all lost family members and we could all connect on that thing. But this was very personal. She wanted it to be very specific. She also wanted to include a lot of truth in it. And I think that's another reason why you might want to do a solo write too, and think that you could, do the idea justice, by yourself rather than with co-writers, because you want to really stick to the truth. Because in another thing, and I know when you said, good songs are written, great songs are rewritten. I really wish that Pierre, that quote could be attributed to me. I give credit where it's due. I did not say that. But what was the other thing? There was another quote. I just lost my train of thought. I don't know what it was that I was going to say. Did it sound like I left something out? What's that?
No, it's all good. I really
all right, cool.
Time in
I know I'm saying a lot. Yeah, I'm jumping around. No, it's great. There was another quote I was going to get to that I wish I could. It wasn't the me and my own noise thing. Oh, I know what it was, about the truth. I've also heard there's a great quote: "Don't let the truth get in the way of a great song." I was once writing with somebody in this building I'm in right now, actually, where my writing room office is, and she and I were writing, and this scene came up where she was drinking on a beach with a guy, and she said vodka, and vodka was like the end of the line, right? So I'm like, well, let's just say gin or rum, I'm like, because those are like a lot easier to rhyme than vodka. She's like, but it was vodka. And I'm like, well, I mean, are we writing a song? Like, was this guy Russian? Like, I'm being serious. I'm like, is there a reason why we should stick to vodka? And she was like, no. I'm like, I got to tell you, this trying to rhyme with vodka right now might be, this might take some time. I mean, of course we could rhyme with vodka, but gin and rum have a little more forgiving vowels at the end. So don't let the truth get in the way of a good song, because if it doesn't matter if it's gin, rum, or vodka, it does not matter. Go for it, Jeanette.
Hey, Adam. Yeah, thanks again for taking the time to share your stuff here. I just wanted to piggyback on what Deanna, I think I said her name right, what she said earlier when she was collaborating with somebody and then to follow through. So I'm kind of running into that for myself. I'm in an app called Vampire, where you just find a network with other people. And I happened to stumble across a couple people where, hey, let's get together. What are your interests? Blah, blah, blah. And then boom, you don't hear from them. I almost was close to collaborating with someone on Vampire. But it's really tricky. From a woman's standpoint of view, when you're meeting someone and they're like, oh, let's get together and jam at my place. And you're just like, but just like in general, I'm just wanted to share that. Like, what do you suggest if something like that doesn't work? Like,
so tell me just the core of what happened. If something like that doesn't work, like you reached out to someone and they just kind of flaked out on you.
Well, they reached out to me. Actually.
I'm sorry. Okay.
And I thought, oh, okay, if they're interested.
Got it.
Obviously the conversation flowed and whatnot. And they're like, oh, I like your stuff. And I did comment on their sound and they commented on my stuff. we both shared interests. And then that was it. It was just like, what happened, And
Yeah,
flaking
I
out
mean,
again, it just seems to be a common thing.
if you don't feel like look, this is like in everything in life. It's not just co-writing, it just
Yeah,
is, it just is a fact of life. I think maybe we feel it a little more and we're a little more sensitive to it and sensitive to it in this co-writing space because our creative endeavors can be very personal to us, and you feel like, oh, maybe they really didn't like what I was doing, or maybe something I said set them off. And you know what? If you don't, as long as you don't feel like you're pestering someone, there's nothing wrong with being persistent. We all know there's a big difference between persistence and pestering. Keep it professional, keep it positive, keep it, I mean, like, there's certainly my closest, this is probably not the best story to tell, but one of my closest collaborators in life, I courted this guy for a while, and he wanted nothing to do with me for a while. And then when we finally started working together, we were in a couple of rock bands together. And again, don't do this at home, folks, but we were that couple in the band, right? Like I think the last band we were in was a quartet that we were really all feeling very excited about. We had a lot of great opportunities here, and why we broke up is a whole nother story. But we would make the other two guys very uncomfortable in the room because of the way our dynamic was. It was like, and then we'd go across the street to the bar, and it was after rehearsal or recording or whatever it was, and writing, and it was always just throwing arms at each other and be like, dude, that was so funny what you said. You were big, it got so tense. And I'm like, and then I listened back to what we did, and it was just pure magic. But anyway, yeah, so it's not a straight line. Nothing is a straight line, Jeanette. That's what it is.
Okay.
Personalities, all of it. It's just not.
Personality, I think it is, yeah.
Cut them loose if you have to. Come back to them, whatever it is. It's just like, don't take things, try. I can't tell you how to feel.
Right.
Try to take things as personally as, because again, I know I mentioned that because this is a creative space. Sometimes we can feel this more, and we are all artists, right? So we do feel more, I mean, I can't help that I wear my heart on my sleeve. And that's another reason why I'm grateful that I'm able to write so many songs, because I'm trying to, I feel like writing songs, it helps my marriage,
Thanks, Adam.
I also think Jeanette, I think being in a place like Chicago, you should try to find some of the open mic nights and some of there's got to be just a ton of them in Chicago.
Sure.
I would say, like, if you're worried about like some of the people, or like you're, especially meeting people on just an app that reaches out to you, like, obviously you don't even know if these people are actually who they say they are.
Sure.
Meeting people in real life, I think is huge. I think also contacting people that you see regularly in like this group, that they're
Right.
actually somebody, and they have, they're actually who they say they are.
Mhm.
And if you have an opportunity to do any sort of like in-person workshops or retreats, like anywhere you can get together, I think creates opportunity to meet people. And
Right.
just feel the vibe, right? Like,
Yeah.
you'll sort of naturally see like, oh, I could see myself working with this person, or I don't know if I could
This is
work
the
with them.
closest that's ever been, so that's why I'm eternally grateful.
Oh, awesome.
Thank
Well, you're
you.
welcome. Shelley, you
Pat,
had your hand
thanks.
raised too.
I actually wanted to add something to that too,
Oh.
just real quick, and this could be a long shot here. Jeanette, I'm going to be in Chicago in 2 weeks. You live in Chicago, the city proper?
Yeah, I'm up on the north side. I'm in Rogers Park.
All right. So I'm going to be there. I'm really going to be at my, at a family event in Milwaukee, but I don't go to Milwaukee without not going to Chicago, without going to
Right.
Chicago. So, I don't know what night I'm going, but I can tell you right now, it's going to involve music. So I
Okay.
put my email there in the chat. That's for anyone,
Right.
really. But if
Okay.
you want to establish contact with me, Jeanette, we can establish contact there. I can give you my itinerary for when I am actually in the big city over there. Because yeah, I will definitely. I mean, the first thing I do whenever I'm in a town that I don't live in is where are the open mics, what's going on tonight. Chicago, I'm going to want to see some blues for sure, because that is one of the few things New York City lacks.
Yeah.
Much to my disappointment. But anyway, just another thing too. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Who's next? I'm sorry, I didn't want to.
Shelley's next, and then there's a couple of questions I want to ask from the chat as well.
Groovy. And I can see the chat now too. Go for it, Shelley. What's up?
I guess Chad and I are road tripping to Chicago to hang out with you and Jeanette in a couple weeks, huh?
No doubt.
Please, please.
All right,
I
I'm
mean, to me,
ready.
the whole
Let's
Midwest, you're all right
go.
next to each other, right? It's
All
all
right.
Maybe we
power
should do a
direction.
Chicago retreat.
I
Yeah.
mentioned that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that would be fun.
So much in Chicago.
Jeanette can show us around.
Do you have a question too, Shelley?
I do.
Go for it.
So when I've done some co-writes, I mean, honestly, I did one like with somebody I met at an open mic. There's some other people, and a lot of people are not, they're not familiar with doing it. And so, do you have any kind of, I don't know, almost like an agreement, like, okay, think like an AA meeting. They do a preamble where they say, here's why we're here and here's how to behave. And people just agree, like, this is what we're doing. And people walking in the door, I mean, they don't know that this is what we do, so they do it every time. So, like, this is us coming together. This is what a co-write's about. You're coming in like this. And then for the ending piece too, when you leave it in limbo, what's the protocol for that? Because, and maybe just spelling it out. Because there's people generally, I mean, I think that they don't know what they're coming into and they have their own. And we had some of it actually happen at the retreat where people were like, I'll go write and you guys are my support staff in some way. And it's like, that's not a co-write, but spelling it out a little bit.
So you're talking about, so again, ultimately, sorry, I always need things boiled down for myself. So ultimately what you're asking, what after the fact was what you were talking about?
Oh, even before the fact,
You're saying
like
just kind of like out. Yeah. Chad, you want to help me with this one? In terms of outlining intentions.
Yeah, when I was listening to you, Shelley, I felt like you kind of were answering your own question. I think if you know someone's not used to it, I think you say, you know what? I know like you haven't written very much. Here's what I found has been successful in the past. Like, don't do it in a way like we're doing this. Just say, I found it successful in the past that, we agree that we're here to write a song. Hopefully we can get at least a first draft. This will be split 50-50, like understanding like there's not a division of like who does more. It's like if you both work on it, you both have an equal share. And then just kind of say exactly what you just said. We're here to have fun and kind of just set the expectations, and then at the end sort of do the same thing, I think, or even talk about the end in the beginning, right? Like say when we wrap up, if we have a draft, like make sure that I have your contact information. We'll keep each other posted where we're sharing the song, where where we might pitch it, those types of things. I don't know if that's helpful.
I've just wondered too, like if there was a, almost where it's like on a piece of paper. Because when I was brand new, I mean, I don't know anything. I'm coming in brand new. And if I have something like on a piece of paper, and then also maybe some information like, here's what we'll do with like Google Docs, just like a thing that is kind of a template guide. Because people coming in new, your head is in 1,000 places and maybe not 100% in, oh, this is how it goes. You're nervous, you don't know the other person that well sometimes. So having a, and then even like I don't know, I'm just saying, like, I would use something like that if I thought like this makes sense, because then you could share it and be like, yeah, we agree. That's what we're doing. Then you go forward. Just a thought.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that might not know what they're entering into, because there are obviously a lot of, you're entering into a legal agreement. We didn't get into that here about just general co-writing etiquette. I mean, we could do a 10 workshop series just on co-writing etiquette alone, what you're entering into. But you remember what you're doing together is together. That's it. You just had a baby with someone basically, and that is you are linked to that person and this idea forever. And that's another way to kind of think, kill your darlings too. I sometimes co-writes will go sideways. I brought in an idea I felt great about, that when it came to me, I was sure it was going to be a hit song one day, and then we destroyed it in the writing room. And then I'm like, you know what? That kind of felt good, because it forces me to come up with even better ideas tomorrow, you know? And then there are people just the opposite, that are just like, there's just this one idea that they think is going to be their meal ticket, you know, and they're just messaging you every single day to just make it better and better and better and better. It's like, I think we beat this horse already a couple times.
But yeah, that's a good point too, Adam, because the etiquette is, if you or your writer says anything within the writing room, like, it's really not ethical to steal someone else's idea and write a different song with it. So like
Oh yeah.
what happens in the room stays in the room. And then also, you can't break off part of the song and like write it with somebody else. Like, you can't be like, well, I wrote most of the lyrics, so I don't like the music, so I'm gonna write with somebody else. That's a big no-no. Because you both own the song.
Yep. Let's say, you know, Shelly, you, me, and Chad get in a room together. We each bring 5 titles, right? Shelly, you bring your 5 titles. I bring my 5 titles. Chad brings his 5 titles. We pick one of those 15 titles to write. That becomes our title. And all the other ones revert back to us.
Yep.
You know, and that just to kind of piggyback on what Chad said about just anything said in the room, you know, it's a very sensitive thing. I heard a really funny story the other day. I can't remember what the exact scenario was, but I know it was a pretty famous person got into a writing room with somebody and immediately said to the other person that, hey, I don't know if you heard this song of mine recently. It was Kenny Chesney said to somebody that I know, said, hey, I just want you to know that this song that I just released, it wasn't that thing that you said in the room way back when or whatever. It was this other thing or whatever. Like, it's just trying to say, like, trying to make a distinction. I wish I could flesh that story out a little more. I wanted to scroll through, unless Chad, you had anything right now, or anybody wanted to say anything. I wanted to show you guys that. Actually, you know what? Let me show you
we do have some questions.
Okay, that was the other thing. I was going in the chat.
So this one, Michael asked, do you fully produce or release your co-written songs? Like, what do you do with them when they're done, and when do you decide if you're going to release them?
So if I have what I call an artist song, so I'm not really an artist, but I do have a duo with my wife. And we do produce and release stuff. But the lion's share of what I'm writing is with the intention, you know, for someone else to sing it. So no, I don't release anything in that regard. You don't want to release something that you want to pitch to somebody, because you could kill your chances of pitching it. I've seen situations where people have put songs on TikTok that blew up, and then they tried to, you know, and then such and such a major artist said, oh, I would have done that song if it didn't blow up on TikTok, you know. So you want to be careful about how you you know, release stuff if you're doing it with the intention of pitching people. But if we're talking about, you know, if you're writing with an artist and that artist is going to cut the song you wrote in the writing room that day, well, expect that song to get produced and cut and released, and it's your song. And you'll be in the writing credits, and you'll get, you know, you register with your pro, you know, ASCAP, BMI, whatever it is. And, you know, there are ways to make money still with this stuff.
And do you professionally demo? How do you, I mean, obviously if you're pitching, when do you do that?
I do so depending on who I'm sharing things with, certain publishers, certain artists want to hear things a little better. If somebody wants to hear a fully fleshed out demo, then I'll get it there. That could be costly for a lot of people. But a lot of times, you know, and this is a big thing in professional writing rooms, is, you know, make sure that somebody in the room can produce, make sure that somebody in the room can sing, make sure that somebody in the room can play guitar. You know, you try and get as many of those skills, so you know, in the writing room. And I know this is like a whole nother can of worms I'm opening right now. Like, oh, wow, I got to find people that I like, that like me, that want to write the same things as me. And then I have to make sure I have to assemble a band basically for that day. It's not always the case. But doing a real demo of something is not always the case. You can do a very strong work tape You can do or what I call like a work tape demo, just something that's very strong, that shows off the song really well, that you did at home, that you edited and tuned and layered some harmonies over, but you don't always necessarily have to do a fully fleshed out band demo. Again, it depends on who it is. I mean, there are some artists that are okay with hearing their own AI voice filters on things pitched to them. Then there are others that'll run for the hills if you send them that, you know, hearing a digitized version of them. Sure, we all know about AI voice filters now at this point.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I have heard too, like when you're pitching, like the number one thing that has to be spot on and really good is the vocal.
Absolutely.
Like
The vocals
it,
of the song. Yep.
yep.
So
Um,
yeah,
Billy
good.
has a question. He says, "Do you write with anyone that mainly just offers stories or lyrics?"
I saw that in the chat. Yes, yes. In fact, I pride myself on being able to write in a number of ways. Now, stories, not so much, although I did find that interesting before. I think, what was it, Shelley or Deanne, that was talking about, somebody said a waltz and like they created a scene or something with all these details. And you know, I love when the smaller the box, oftentimes the better, you know, the more we know what the pitch is going to be, you know, or we know what we're writing to. But sure, people will share fully fleshed out lyrics with me. They'll share just the lyrics to a chorus. There are people that I just work with like that. There are people that expect just melodies from me, where I'll write a song from top to bottom with just melody, verse, pre-chorus, bridge, not knowing what it's about, send it to someone, and boom, they've written lyrics to it. So yes, that's totally a thing. I mean, that's the way Elton John wrote all his hits, right? I mean, Bernie Taupin, I mean, that's those lyrics came first. He wrote the music to it. So that's totally fair game. Absolutely.
And Dana has some questions, and then we'll let you share what you've been trying to
Yeah,
share.
it's fine.
Dana, what
I'm
do you
not
have?
trying. No, I'd rather do questions.
Yeah. So I'm actually a Nashville-based songwriter who's done a lot of co-writing, but mostly in the pop sphere, which is slightly different than country for some reasons. I was going to ask, as far as that 3-hour time frame that you said, does that include tracking the vocal, and do you do stacks the same day as the write, or like how does it usually work?
Sometimes we will get so you're talking about doing the work tape and or demo within the 3 hours. Sometimes that happens, but I don't always expect that to happen. I think 3 hours for writing is fine. And again, most of the sharing that I'll do initially with a song, if we think it has legs, it's a crude work tape made on an iPhone with a great vocal, to Chad's point. You don't want to skimp on the vocal, even if it's on your iPhone. Make sure that vocal is crystal clear, because that is the song. That the vocal is performing the only parts of it. I mean, you know, you're in Nashville, you know, but the vocal is performing the only parts of it that's copyrightable, you know. So do the math, right? But that's exciting. So that's how is that going there?
It's going great. I'm part of this grassroots movement about Nashville pop. We're doing songwriting camps. We're doing like networking events. So I'm really excited to be here because there is pop in Nashville. I also had several more questions because I'm that person.
Go for it.
Do you, as far as like when you have that rough work tape, when or how often do you like kind of flesh out a full demo for it when you are about to pitch it to somebody, or like when does that usually happen, and how many?
If a publisher, sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And you're good. And how many of those like do you actually like start to flesh out, or are they mostly just work tapes with vocals?
Most everything it remains on work tapes. As far as fully fleshed out demos, if a producer asks for it, or someone, or artist's camp asks for it, if that's how they make their decisions, then we have to do it. Yeah. If we want to pitch it. Yeah. I mean, it really depends on that. Know who you're sending what you're sending to, I think is what it really comes down to. I know in pop that you're producing a lot. Like the first impression is a production. The first impression is like what it's going to sound like is an approximation of what it's going to sound like on the Billboard Hot 100. I know that can be, you know, that's a bit of a frustrating thing for people that are just focused on the writing end of it, you know, that want to. Did you read The Song Machine? Have you read that book? Oh, please. Highly recommend it. I think you'll love it. And I'm really excited that you're in Nashville for pop too, because I'm in Nashville all the time. I just got back. You know, I just got back after just getting back. I think I'm always there. you know, and I know that it's obviously it's very country heavy, but it's just writing heavy. So I feel really good to hear that you're carving out a little world for yourself in the pop thing, because it is definitely there. Of course it's there, you know. So it's almost like you know, you're like under the radar, you know, but still, you know, working at a high level, because obviously that's writing town, you know. More
Definitely
questions,
is for
Pat.
sure. Yes, this
Yeah.
is more of like a business admin question. I know when you go into a write, you're trying to like, like get to know the people, set a vibe type of thing, especially if it's new people. When do you ask for their IPIs and when do you have them sign the split sheet and or the one-stop agreement?
So, well, okay, so one stop and what do you call it? Split sheets isn't always necessary at every step of the way. Or I'm sorry, it's not always necessary, at least in my orbit. IPI number, if everybody has it right then and there, I'm going to show you exactly where I put my IPI number in the doc. I put it in the doc. So yeah, you want to get that immediately, I think, because the one time you don't get it, that's the song that takes off, and then you can't even find the person, you know,
Yeah.
or they're not getting their cut, you know,
Yeah.
or somebody doesn't have your IPI number and you're not getting your cut, even worse, right?
Totally.
So yeah, I don't concern myself with split sheets so much at the outset, or the one stop and whatnot. I mean, that's obviously a very sync thing, you know, right out of the gate, you know, because those are very bang bang transactions, you know. But yeah, definitely the IPI number. And yeah, I mean, somebody registers it with, you know, their pro, and then they're registering it for you on your behalf too. But you know that there's, I mean, I think you're not talking so much about protection so legally so much as just crossing your T's and dotting your I's in
Putting
case
it all together.
something happens with the song. Because, and I don't know if anybody's experienced with this, but there are not a lot of shenanigans that I've seen in terms of like people doing shady things creatively and or with publishing and whatnot, at least in my experience. I know there's a lot of people that are always concerned that someone's going to steal their ideas, or they'll get cut out of this, cut out of that, and be like, you know what, if you want to do this seriously, and you're doing it with serious people, they're going to cross their T's and dot their I's, because that gets around town quickly. That'll get around New York. Everybody in New York knows who not to work with. I mean, New York is 8 million people, you know? So anyway, yeah, you have more?
Oh, no, that was it.
I love asking. Okay. I hope
but
all that was
one thing
Oh,
that I thought
yes.
of when you're talking about registering with the PROs, ASCAP and BMI, registering with a PRO is not the same as registering it for copyright. So if you're going to register a copyright, that is a separate process. That is, your song is not registered for copyright if you register with BMI or ASCAP. So I just want to point that out.
I think that once things really get to the next, you know, to the top level, I mean, once, you know, something's getting released on a big album, you know, that's when you're copywriting things. But yeah, it's totally different.
Yeah.
Registering with your PRO, but you can get paid playing your own songs if you register your songs with your
Absolutely.
PRO. Everybody knows that here. You can, yeah.
And just a plug for the Pro Writer Group, on December 7th, I'm having an attorney come talk to the group about copyright. So if you're not a member of the Pro Writer Group, might be a good time to sign up. That's my little plug. Adam, somebody asked in the chat, do you do pop, or are you just mainly country?
I will do pop. I prefer to do it with the artist though, if I'm going to be in that world, because I just don't know. I just don't want to navigate that world of having to get a fancy production just to pitch the first person at the first step in the pop world. So, but yeah, I mean, I write with pop writers. I totally do. Yeah, absolutely. Pop artists, excuse me, pop writers. I mean, if you approach me and you aren't the artist and you want to write pop with me, and you have a plan for whatever it is, if it's sync or whatever, and you have a connection and we know where it's going, then yeah, totally. But I mean, at the end of the day, I don't turn down any opportunity that sounds interesting. I'm definitely a yes person. You know, especially the things that like you fear and resist. You know, I say yes to probably more things than I should, but I regret not saying yes to more things than the things that I said yes to that overwhelmed me, if that makes sense. You know? There are some interesting things here. Somebody else said something too in here about Billy Lang. You said this about Steve Vai, said he ignores his weaknesses and cultivates his strengths. It's interesting coming from someone like Steve Vai, but then again, like his weaknesses on guitar are probably better than my strengths on guitar, and I'm a good guitar player. So
Yeah, look up Steve Vai's top 10 reasons for success. That was
that's
one of the things he
interesting.
said.
I was just sharing with somebody the legendary Steve Vai anecdote about Vinnie Colaiuta and the sushi in the Frank Zappa rehearsal. We don't have to talk about that here, but if anybody's curious, it's one of the most mind-blowing stories. Anyway, what else we got in the chat, or do we have any other questions? Anyone want to unmute? Let's see. Oh, here we go. How would a minion such as me, oh come on, actually get a song to an artist? A TikTok blow up would be amazing. You know, I was mentioning in ways to find co-writers, you can find them on social media. I mean, if you are really into TikTok, and TikTok, we all know TikTok is a huge thing, a huge launching pad for careers. If you are on the up and up with artists on the rise on TikTok, those are the people you might want to approach for a co-write. As far as how does a minion, I don't know, I don't want to even say that. Why'd you say that about yourself? Get a song to someone. An idea will always get you into, or let me refer, not always. Ideas will get you into better rooms and better situations, period. Somebody I know was just starting out, and they were working in the same building as a future Hall of Fame songwriter. And he overheard that Hall of Fame songwriter say out loud, if I had a hit idea every day, I could write a hit every day. And this other person went ding, 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 because one of their skill sets was coming up with ideas. And they approached that future Hall of Fame songwriter with an idea. That person said yes, and they got it cut. And it got on a major album. So that's another thing, going back to my point about how I think everybody in this room has greatness in them. You know, it's just a matter of how we're going to let it come out. How are we, you know, I know I said cynically, how do we get out of our own way? Because oftentimes that's what it is. But everybody in this room is sitting on hit ideas. I guarantee it. You have them already written down somewhere or typed in your phone. I swear. It's like, it's a mathematical probability that you do. It's just that, like, do you realize how good it is? And do you realize that idea, you could go up to somebody. I have a friend who went up to Tom Douglas, if you know who that is. Tom Douglas wrote The House That Built Me, among many, many other things, you know, that Miranda Lambert song. He went up to Tom Douglas and said, I have an idea that's too good to resist. And he goes, pitch it to me. He pitched it to him. They wrote it together. Everybody's looking for ideas, because really at the end of the day, Chad, you look like you gotta.
No, I was just gonna say, and that's the other thing too, is just because you write with someone who's written hits doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna get a hit either. You know what I mean? Like you said it before, where even the hit writers get into a room and they know that chances of this being the one are very, very small, but you have to do it. It's like buying lottery tickets, right? Like you have to write the songs to buy the chance. But yeah, I always think to myself too, you know, you've heard the theory of less than 6 degrees of separation between any two people on Earth, right? Like there's less than any person that you can name, you could get to them in less than 6 connections.
Yep.
In your circle.
Kevin Bacon, right?
The Kevin Bacon theory.
I know where he lives. I could probably just talk to his doorman.
But like you think about how you think about some of these people are so distant or there's no way to get to them. But like, I think like, okay, let's use an example, right? Like me and Oprah Winfrey. Like can I get to Oprah Winfrey in less than 6 degrees? Yes. So I used to work at an apartment building on the weekends, and the girl I worked with, her aunt was one of the producers on the Oprah show. So she worked directly for Oprah Winfrey. So I have the girl, her aunt, Oprah. I'm like 3 degrees away from Oprah, right? Like, who does Oprah know then? Oprah knows everybody. So the 4th degree is anybody else who Oprah is connected to, right? So the fact that you think like, oh, this is impossible, or like, how do I get there? You never know whose aunt works for Oprah, right? Like, everyday people could be your, like, a connection, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, this is another reason why I'm a yes person. So many different opportunities. I mean, I have the most insane week this week, what I've agreed to do, but I'm doing it. I'm here. This is so exciting. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Chad, again for the opportunity.
Yeah, do you want to show us your stuff quick, and then we can probably wrap up for the day?
Yeah, let's take a look and I'll show you guys my okay, so this is me in my drive. Yes, I have one of those toolbars, as you can see up there, that's completely clogged with every kind of rhyming dictionary and sources I could find. So, okay, I just have this is a folder, 2024 co-writes. I click on that. I go into in progress. Oh boy, I don't know that you want to see all that, but anyway, let's just say, so new folder, new song, okay, create. Where is it? New song. Now I'm in the folder, okay? Now in the folder itself, I'm going to create the doc, right? So most people do this on the docs, right? And I do the folder first so I can put the doc in it. And another thing is, you might have to go to page setup. I think all mine are default pageless, right? I don't like the page breaks, right? Because those have those annoying indentations and there's like 10 lines of blank and then an indentation, then 10 more lines of blank. And let's see. So this is my table method, right? We're all following there. You go to that table. And then I kind of expand that. And then I keep the song over here. I keep the notes over there, the boneyard, the spare parts, this and that, right? So it's good. We can see everything we want. I think this comes back to my days. I'll make a fun analogy here for you all. This goes back to my days of bartending in very busy downtown New York bars. Especially if it was like a small operation and we're partying with the patrons too. Again, don't do anything I say at home. But there were nights where we're in the dark and, it's 4 deep of people screaming their drink orders, this and that. And then one of them asks for this one obscure thing that I know I have a 6-pack of somewhere in my cooler, but it's scattered throughout the cooler. I want that 6-pack, right? I want to be able to grab it blindly, and that's kind of, I have one co-writer that calls this side of my, we don't call it the boneyard. When we work together, he calls it the cooler because of my bar story. So these are all the ideas we're kind of keeping on ice over here. Okay, so there's that. And then, so over here is where I put my Zoom link. I put my Zoom link right at the top. I'm on a Mac, obviously, you can see here, and I have my, those stickies, those stick-it notes that you can use in Mac. I have one of those ready to go with my IPI number, all my publishing information, and my Zoom link. And also basically my spiel that I send to people so I put the IPI down here, everybody's IPI numbers down there. And then let's go back here to the folder itself. So I go on, so that's the folder. Oops, why did it do that? I go to the folder and then I go share, and then there we go, share. And then this email window pops up, and there'll be an opportunity to whoever's email address I put in there. Now they own this folder too. They have just as much rights, or I own it, but they have just as many rights as I do as far as being an editor. And there's a room for a little email that attaches to this sharing invite. And in there, I say, if it's people that don't know me well, I might tell them, hey, this is how I set it up and this is why. Again, oh, and 2 things. Want to go back to the notification. So this folder that I'm in, you can drag audio directly into it. You can just drag it in. That's it. And you can see untitled, you see this untitled document, and then right next to it, there'll be an audio file. So you keep all related audio files, everything about this song all in one place. Now let's get back into the document here, and then I'll show you this amazing thing that someone showed me. So you go into tools, you go into notification settings. You want that clicked, and that is already clicked there. And then you want, very important, you want added or removed content clicked. And that's it. And I put my email in the chat for everybody. If you want to pitch me ideas and want to write, I'm game. That's available to anyone, even regardless of experience. Feel free to do that. And also, if you want me to clarify anything from today, I don't know if any thing I had on my slides. If if you screenshotted any of them, I thought there was some helpful things there. And I hope I unpacked it all for you as best I could. Answered any questions. Any more questions from anyone?
Dana, you had talked about your cursor parking lot when you're in co-writes. I think Adam would get a kick out of that.
Please,
Yeah.
I like the way it sounds already.
It's very silly. So basically, you just make a box out of lines, and then everybody, especially if there's, because I mean, I work in pop, so we've got 12 writers in a room, not actually, but everybody's got their cursors and it's like covering up lyrics and there's too many people. So you have one designated space where everybody puts their cursor so that it doesn't like show the text over of their name over the lyrics. So
Brilliant,
cursor
brilliant.
parking lot. I put a little
Especially, oh, that's brilliant. Especially in rooms where you have too many people. Do you really write with 12 people, or was that like, okay,
massive
was that like a
exaggeration?
subtle jab at me for dismissing you all as oh, it's 12 people, it's
I'm
chaos.
from Jersey. It's our love language.
Oh, good.
But no, as 6, including myself, is the biggest room I've been in. But it's generally just 3 or 4.
Right on. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Adam, this has been awesome. You did great. I think I was totally intrigued the whole time, so I hope everybody else was as well. So thank you for doing this. We'll have to have you back to talk about some of your other learnings about the writing itself, because I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, I'm an open book. I love to share this stuff. We all have different things to offer, so there's nothing I'm going to tell you that's you're not like taking a secret or anything. You're thinking of things in a little different way, and you're going to put yourself through it. So to me, the more people that are out there that have just other know that there's always a way to do things. Don't be discouraged ever. There's a way, and there's room for all of us. I do believe that. So thank you all for coming.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody, and I will see all of you soon. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you at the next workshops that are coming up, and reach out if you need anything.
Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you, Chad.
Bye, everybody.